Well, let's get into this card. Let's recap this. Welcome back, friends, family, MMA fans, to the Fight Plug, where we are here and ready to recap UFC Fight Night, Sandhagen versus Song, and we're going back to the Apex here, where Dana White's army of Contender Series fighters descended upon the Apex Center to all fight for $10,000 apiece. Interesting night of fights.
Was it like 13 dudes from the or 13 people from the Contender Series that fought on this card? That's crazy.
13 Contender Series fighters, and to mix results. I didn't watch the whole card. I watched the main card. Some of them were like, okay, this experiment is failing with this person, and we'll get to some of them. We're not going to cover all of them. I watched most of the main card, and I watched some of the early undercard. I caught Javid Basharat versus Tony Gravely. That was a really fun fight. Javid looks really good. Obviously, I watched the Gillian Robertson versus Mariya Agapova fight. I'd say above anything else, like, this wasn't a bad card. I was entertained.
No, it was
fairly
entertaining.
But it was more brutal than anything. This was a fucking
a gross one.
I'm pretty desensitized to mixed martial arts at this point. Like, I could see dudes getting lamped left and right, cold fucking, but the cuts, man, this was an especially bloody card. And we'll start at the top of the card, and there's already some cut action to address there, but Cory Sandhagen and Song Yadong lock horns for 4 rounds in a ranked bantamweight fight. I had this going into, we didn't get to see the 5th round, but going into the 5th round, it was a really, really close fight. I had it 2-2, but if anybody would say that they had it like 3-1 or even 4-0, like, I feel like most of the rounds were close enough, save for maybe like one round, where I wouldn't really fight with you too much on that. Like, how did you have this scored going into the 5th round that we never saw?
I thought Sandhagen was up, but slightly. Just a little bit more so than and it was mostly because of that up elbow that he threw that got that, because that's just letter of the law judging. That's like inflicting damage. You can see the damage, and you can see how it changed the fight, so you got to give him a little more. I had him barely going into it, but I guess 2 of the 3 judges had 2 of the 3 judges had it tied, right?
Yes.
Going into the 5th, which was very interesting. Yeah.
So
I couldn't, like you said, I couldn't argue with that.
Yeah, like, I think if anything, I would probably say, like, I would have it even going into the 5th, or leaning towards Sandhagen, because, like you mentioned, it's kind of tough to say, well, Yadong's ahead when he's literally wearing the damage on his face.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I felt like, if it had gone into the 5th round, and if Song Yadong had gutted it out and managed to win the 5th round, or at least kind of perceptively win it enough for the judges, he would have ended up winning a split decision.
Had a good round, and then ended in a favorable position, or like a advantageous position on top, or maybe up against the cage, like, controlling the action towards the end. You could have easily, if they would have given it to him, I would have taken it, which is wild considering the man's 24 years old and fought a guy who's an absolute fucking murderer.
Yeah, a consensus top 5 bantamweight in Cory Sandhagen, and I think that's the biggest takeaway from this fight, is that, like, Song Yadong solidified himself. Like, that guy, I don't want to see him fighting anybody outside of the top 8. At that, like, bantamweight's very busy right now, so I could understand if it's tough to get him a fight, especially coming up short, against Sandhagen here. Like, we still have to remember he's the loser, and it just feels very, it's a cut. It ended in doctor stoppage. So yeah. There's always room for speculation and for conjecture there, but I thought Song Yadong looked really good. It was a deal where, like, a lot of their strengths were kind of canceling each other out. I thought it looked like Song Yadong was having a bit of trouble dealing with the reach and height advantage of Cory Sandhagen, but the speed is what really kind of like closed the distance.
Yeah, that freaked me out. It was like, wow, how are you that fast?
Yeah, so
and Sandhagen is very fast, and he has a great chin, and he has awesome reflexes, hand-eye coordination. I think that gets lost as a skill in fighting, which it's like the biggest skill. I mean, it's not quite baseball level to where you have to have that kind of hand-eye coordination, but just to be so in control of all of your limbs and to manipulate someone with feints and then kind of like look one way, punch another way, and to do it that fast
Mhm.
and that and like reacting. You have like small, minute little windows where his head's there and his hands maybe not, or you're guessing where his head's going to be, and to do it that fast and to be that accurate is like top shelf shit.
Yeah, and especially at this weight class where it's hard to stand out for being fast.
Hmm.
Like
Oh yeah,
everybody's fast at bantamweight, so to kind of stand out that much more is really a testament to both guys.
yeah,
It's Cory Sandhagen here, gutted it out, got a good win, and I think like at the end, I would kind of chalk a lot of it up to just his experience and the
yeah.
he's been in there with guys who have pushed him further. And he's also kind of felt more, than Song Yadong. Well, actually, Song has 7 losses now compared to Cory
Yeah,
Sandhagen's
he
4.
felt Yadong.
The
He went deep with Yadong, and
Yeah,
he felt it all night. So
yeah. He definitely, like, after this fight, I think a few years from now, he felt a deep one. Who's Dong? Yadong.
yeah, Yadong.
Yeah, I think in the future, Song Yadong would probably say like this is one of the first, like, this
It's
Cory
crazy.
Sandhagen made him a better fighter last on Saturday.
It's fucking crazy. Sandhagen's going to have to see him again. Uh, he's gotten so good, and not just because what is this? That's how many? But he has 7 losses too, though,
Yeah.
which I saw. So um, he's going to see Cory Sandhagen again. They're going to fight again.
Mhm.
There's no way around it. Yadong's going to be in the top 5. I mean, for the next 7 years, unless he goes somewhere else, which he might. You know what I mean? That bag is pretty wild, and he could probably do great things in one. But
Mhm.
or even PFL or wherever. Um, but I don't see him doing that, and that's kind of like way too far out to talk about. But he's going to be top 5 for 7, 8 years, and if not, the champ, or at least going, because these guys are old a lot. I mean, you got TJ Dillashaw, Aljamain Sterling. These guys aren't young.
Mhm.
You got, Sandhagen's over 30. Fuck.
I think there's definitely some tasty matchups ahead, like of guys who are still, at least on Tapology, who are still ranked ahead of Song Yadong, because he's sitting at number 9 on Tapology right now, and in front of him, directly in front of him, he has Dominic Cruz and Rob Font. Both of those guys coming off of losses, so
Very old.
depending on how cruel Dana White and the UFC want to be
I'd like to
about.
see him fight a guy he's lost to, which I think, and it's going to be, this is so, Rob Font, Dominic Cruz are not going to want to fight in
No,
the next 3 months.
that would be
Just
sending them to
because,
the glue factory for
well,
sure.
not so much that too. We've talked about, so we're going on a year um, of doing the podcast. So, like, um, these guys just don't want to fight during the holiday season. They want to
Mhm.
enjoy Thanksgiving, especially the American guys. They want to enjoy Thanksgiving. And then the older guys, they just want to be with their kids. I mean, like Cheeto Vera and Sanhagen, like, let's make that right away.
Yeah.
Let's just fucking cut to the chase. Like, because they got kids, families. They want to spend the holidays with them. They don't want to be cutting weight and away from their family during Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
Let's just or Christmas at the very least. Let's not get them like put on a fucking card right away.
Mhm.
But I would like to see Yadong fight a guy he's lost to, which is Kyler Phillips, because now he has 7 losses. So let's kind of find some of those guys that he's lost to in the UFC. Let's clean that up,
Mhm.
because you don't want to be. You would hate for him to go on a run and maybe beat like a Marab or guys like this, and like a big, like a kind of out of nowhere, like Peter Yan and Sean O'Malley are fighting, where you
Mhm.
get like that huge discrepancy in ranking, but like it's almost a deserved fight. Like if we saw Song Yadong fight a Peter Yan or someone, we wouldn't, especially after this one, you wouldn't be like, oh wow, that's kind of out of left field.
Mhm.
No, it makes sense.
Mhm.
But then if he does beat him, then you'd be like, well, he's lost to Kyle Phillips or he's lost to this guy.
Mhm.
So you want him to kind of go clean up that 7, the best he can, to put him in the best foot forward to when he's turning 26, 27, entering his prime. There aren't these guys out of left field like kind of like blemishes on his record. Like, nope, he went up, he cleaned that shit out. That's, and would get him back on the horse mentally, putting him in the right spot. So if his management team's thinking the right way, which hopefully they are, I would hope that they're kind of looking back in the rankings, guys that maybe had beat him or given him and wanting to go clean that up. That's what I'd like to see. And Kyler Phillips is a damn good fighter.
I think if you're looking at it from Song Yadong's point of view, that's a really, really good point. Like there are certainly losses against perceived lesser guys that it would be like, compared to where he's at relative to now, that it would be nice to see him go back and clean up and get those back. From a promotional standpoint, I feel like there's a few different ways you could play it too, because there's always like if Kyler Phillips, he's on a 1-fight win streak right now. He's fought once in 2022 against Marcelo Rojo. So if let's say Kyler Phillips goes on a 3-4 fight win streak and it just kind of maybe is on the brink, on the cusp of the top 10, but hasn't quite worked his way in there. Meanwhile, a guy like Song Yadong is possibly already, in a top 3, maybe already a contender, or maybe already challenged for the title and came up short. It's kind of a good way to put a guy like Kyler Phillips over and be like, oh, and he has a win over former title challenger Song Yadong.
Very good point.
So there's definitely a few different ways that you could play it. And now that's a lot of what if though. That depends on what Kyler Phillips does right now. I agree with you though. I think Kyler Phillips is scheduled to fight Jack Shore in November.
That's a good fight.
Mm-hmm. So if Kyler Phillips is on a 2-fight winning streak and we find ourselves towards the end of the year or the beginning of next year and Song Yadong's still looking for an opponent, I would be for that.
Song Yadong, Jack Shore.
I think, and you know what, dude, we see it a lot.
Not Jack Shore, sorry, Song Yadong and
Kyler Phillips. And we see it a lot in title fights. Fucking the UFC loves their rematches. They love their trilogies. I'm kind of big on a rematch between two guys who were just there just because. Because they've had some time away. One guy's grown, or they both grown, and somebody wants to get it back. And you get instances where, like this is a perfect example where a guy has a loss to a dude lower in the rankings, but has ended up going on to do bigger and better things. And it's like, hey, like you should want to. And Kyler Phillips, I'm sure, wouldn't have a problem with that because, hey, like you're higher ranked than me now. You have more exposure than me. People have seen you fight in the main event and prove yourself against a guy like Cory Sandhagen. So even Kyler Phillips, who has that win over him, should be enthusiastic to run that back. I think rematches for fringe top 10 guys that need to happen more. I think it only makes things more interesting too. I feel like it gives us an opportunity to like bookmark these parts of guys' careers, and we can kind of like scale and see how much they've grown, because oftentimes in MMA it's hard to tell because styles make matches, you know what I mean? But we see these guys and they fought back, and let's see when that Kyler Phillips fight was. Oh, looking at the wrong guy. Song Yadong. Yeah, he fought it was just a year ago. So Song Yadong's been busy. So 2021. But let's say they lock horns again, mid 2023, late 2023. That's already, about 2 years elapsed. And that was March of 2021. So let's say, they lock horns again at the end of 2023. That's not an insignificant amount of time to see how much both guys have grown, or to scale or gauge how much progress Song Yadong has made. And obviously we can see it with Song Yadong because of the guys that he's competed against. It's not we're not going too far out on a limb to say that he's improved. Seeing how well he did with Sandhagen. I'm for it either way they play it.
Yeah.
What about Sandhagen, man? What you said you like to see the Cheeto fight.
And then it's what the one I was looking like, okay, what's coming up? They got ABC, right? Like UFC on ABC again coming up. That would be a fucking sick ass headliner or something like that, or like a feature fight. But Sandhagen Cheeto deserves a fucking 5 round though. That feels like a championship fight.
I think they do it. Yeah, I think that's a good main event for like Cory Sandhagen right now is a really good fight night main eventer.
Yeah,
Like he's a guy who you can really call upon for that, and he's dependable.
he's
Like,
going to bring it. Yeah,
yeah.
it's not going to be fucking boring. Yeah, big time for sure, dude.
Where are my bantamweight rankings? Here we are. I would like to see Merab and Cory Sandhagen.
I would like to see Cory Sandhagen fight a gentleman who I think we're going to be speaking about a little bit today. That's kind of what I would have liked to see. I think we talked about it, but we won't.
Who are you talking about? Andre Fili? That's
no.
featherweight. I'm looking down the card. What are the bantamweights fought?
No. I'm talking about, of course, the King of Rio.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that for sure, too.
Because Cory Sandhagen, fucking Jose Aldo in fucking Brazil. Come on, dude.
That should have been the fight. Like, yeah.
Come on, man.
Or anybody but Merab.
And
really.
yeah.
Especially
dude,
in hindsight.
Merab, we both love him.
Yeah.
But dude, you fucking did our boy dirty. But oh my god, dude.
And I tried to love that fight too. Like when we broke we broke that fight down, I was like, you know what? I usually don't like it when they try and set the young up to eat the old in this sport, but this is the way you do it and stuff. And then afterwards, I was just like, fuck you guys, man. Yeah. Especially now knowing that Merab seemingly has no intentions of fighting his friend, fighting. I'm over here fucking forgetting the Aljamain Sterling, forgetting the champion's name over here. So it's like, what are we doing? Like, why are we using him to knock off contenders then?
Nope, you're right.
But yeah.
It's.
But for that reason also though, I would like to see I think I would like to see Merab fight Cory Sandhagen a little bit more than Chito. I'd be perfectly fine with either fight. I think the Chito Vera Cory Sandhagen fight would actually be more entertaining on paper. I think that fight is just sells better because right now a lot of people aren't very happy with Merab, but I think you got to find stuff for Merab to do since he doesn't want to fight Aljamain Sterling. He's probably one fight away from contendership. And I think at this point you have to explore using him. It feels weird saying using him as like a stepping stone because fucking Merab's nobody's stepping stone, obviously. But yeah, he's got to stay busy, and we're about a month away from seeing what happens between TJ Dillashaw and Aljamain Sterling, and then obviously Peter Yan and Sugar Sean O'Malley. So the bantamweight division is still going to shake up a lot in the next few months because there's a lot of really important matches coming up. But yeah, I'm with you though. Either way, I'm happy. Cory Sandhagen, Chito, give it to me. Like, give me all that.
Yeah, and that, I mean, we can talk all day about who we want, but he called him out too.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to see him fight. I just don't feel like, considering the last fight with Aldo, the news that broke, Merab doesn't deserve anything, and then especially like because, well, the thing too about it for me is like, okay, you kind of a lot of guys did that at altitude, so we can't just lay it all like that's the outlier.
Yeah.
If all of them would have been bangers and no one gassed, and then that one just was a dud, then okay then.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people did it, so put that aside. But at the same time, like, so if he does fight Cory Sandhagen and beat him, he's not. What's going to happen with that? Because he's not going to want to fight his buddy. He's not going to want to fight his friend. If fucking Algeo gets through Dillashaw, which I think he will, he's not going to want to fuck. So then what? Why even waste Cory Sandhagen fight with Merab if he's not? It's not going to elevate him to the level that he would. You would think if you beat Aldo and you beat Cory Sandhagen, you would deserve a title shot. Mm-hmm. Anyone, and then you have the skill and you have the resume that Merab does. There's no other. You can't fight down. You're not going to fight O'Malley.
I can't really argue with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
then
what?
It's the same thing I was criticizing the Aldo fight for.
No, I'm sorry. I just beat Jose Aldo. I beat Cory Sandhagen, but I will not be fighting my friend. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that. I'll fight I don't know. By that time, Dillashaw or O'Malley or Peter Yan's gonna want a fucking title fight. Peter Yan will fight fucking Aljamain Sterling. I guarantee you put that fight out there, he'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're gonna do that and you're gonna do that to the King of Rio, and then you want to just say, "Nah, I don't want to fight the champ," fuck you. Move up or move down, and let the guys who want to fight the champ go ahead. And that I would say that about anybody, let alone someone who I do hold as in high esteem as I do Merab.
Mm-hmm. It's like, what the fuck do you do with Merab if he has no intentions of going up or down? Like, what are you just gonna hang around? Like, he's ranked number 3 right now. Like,
it's such a weird cuck angle to take, because it's like you're just waiting for your friend to lose anyway. So like, you're waiting. Well, either way, your friend's gonna have a downfall.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, if your buddy's girlfriend's gonna get fucked by someone, it might as well be you, dude. You know what I'm saying? Because then you know where you've been,
right?
You know where your filthy cock's been, so you might as well just put it in her. So why fucking some guy you don't even know do it?
Yeah,
and then you'll know she's gonna have a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, at least she was taken care of. Right. I feel like if I'm the UFC, in a way, this could be the UFC kind of still investing in themselves, because, I mean, if you're Dana White, you probably believe TJ Dillashaw's got a legit shot against Aljamain Sterling, because we could be saying this right now, and it does seem like a fucking wrench in the whole situation, having Merab sitting there being this guardian of the throne, so to speak, knocking off contenders. But TJ Dillashaw gets the upset against Aljamain in October, and suddenly, like, this whole thing changes, and then we're talking about, like, get Merab in there, So it could, but then again, we could see the opposite. We could see the reverse, where then suddenly Aljamain Sterling's doing the same thing and choking out contenders and not letting him get at Merab. If I was in charge, which I will be one day. No, if I was in charge, I feel like,
in all honesty, though, the guys, we talk a lot of shit. The guys that are matchmaking, they're doing a pretty good job. And the way they're doing a good job is because the fights that we don't think are going to be good, the cards that like look like they should be shitty, they just end up being fucking bangers all the way up and down. So it's like, wow, these guys, they know a little more. But go ahead, sorry to fucking.
No, and I was looking at this recently because of a conversation I was having about fighter pay. But
no way.
That like the roster has grown so much, because I've still had this stuck in my head. Well, actually, let me finish my point though. Real quick, I would position Merab to be fighting the guys that Aljamain Sterling beats at this point. So if you like TJ Dillashaw, if you come up short against Aljamain Sterling, get ready to fight Merab, and that's how you're going to earn your shot back to Aljamain. If not, if you lose to Merab, then hey, get in line, prepare to fight somebody in the top 10. At least that way we're not sniping contenders before they get to Aljamain Sterling, and instead we're using him after the fact. But back to the roster growth. I still had it stuck in my head, this number of like 700 to 750 fighters, and I looked it up, and that's what it was in about 2020. The roster of UFC fighters was about 700 to like 725 fighters. I looked it up recently, and I'd still have to kind of verify this, because it could be a case where like they're not necessarily counting fighters that have been dropped from the promotion, and they're just counting all of them. But now it's at like 1,400, which is like double, which I'm sure if we extrapolate a little bit, we'd probably work that down to significantly less, maybe like, I don't know, fucking 12. I'm pulling numbers out of my ass because I have a feeling they're probably counting, because dude, like, you look at UFC roster watch, relevant guys come up with red X's next to their name often. So
a smiling Sam Alvey.
Yeah. Cancel this fucking podcast right now.
Yeah.
But no, like if you're a matchmaker and you're dealing with those kind of numbers, and you have to get those guys, everyone on that roster needs a certain amount of fights per year. It's easy to sit here, be in our armchair fucking, talking heads about MMA and be like, they should match these guys up together. But like you mentioned, the holidays come up, and all of a sudden you're the matchmaker and you got that to contend with. Suddenly every American fighter doesn't want to fight during the holidays, etc. And
you got the guys from different faiths, like the Islamic faith. They're like, you got Ramadan, you got things like that. These guys are just juggling so fucking much, man. Work visas, fucking just everything else. Like, like the whole thing with Peter Yan and his fucking camp not being able to come with him.
Yeah.
It's just fucking wild, man. So,
like,
hats off to these guys. Like, I talk a lot of shit. I will continue to, because they fucking deserve it. But I don't necessarily think the matchmakers do. Like the guys that really, the bread and butter type dudes who put the shit together the right way and have done so.
Yeah, the guys who were doing the legwork aren't the ones that decided to have Nate Diaz fight Khamzat Chimaev. Even though it didn't happen, but that is that's an executive order. But yeah, man, so many factors, so many things that we don't see either from our end, because I was talking to somebody earlier today, WMMA, because there's a confirmation that or someone was interviewing Mana Fiorot because she's got her fight coming up, and she was saying that Macy Barber's team ducked her.
Oh, wow.
No surprise there. I'm not really surprised. Macy Barber's been pretty smart about calling out flyweights that are kind of ranked above her and more or less kind of just holding on. Not exactly the girls who are still setting the world on fire. She's not looking to fight other prospects, and that's smart. I'm not a big Macy Barber fan, but I'm also not going to knock her for that. Like, that's what you should be doing if you're a fighter. But somebody was bringing up about how apparently back in last year, I think, or no, in 2020, Antonina Shevchenko had apparently ducked Gillian Robertson, who just fought this weekend on the card, so somewhat relevant. So I don't go off to a tangent.
Knuckles. And my son thought it was Knuckles from Sonic. He loved Knuckles.
Knuckles choked the shit out of that girl, Dad.
Why is she biting her tongue?
Yeah. But that, I guess at one point Gillian Robertson was saying that Antonina Shevchenko ducked her, and I looked at their like when that happened or when that accusation was, and then Shevchenko, like it could all come down to scheduling. Like Antonina had just fought, and then Robertson wanted to fight the next month, and it's like, well, yeah, of course she's not going to be able to turn around and fight that much. And we see so many cases like that where somebody gets called out for ducking, and either it's like, well, bro, I just fought, and you want to get in there way sooner than I do at this point right now, or I already have somebody kind of in the works, then you don't know about it yet. And and then if you're a matchmaker, you kind of have to keep your you kind of have to keep your ear to the ground too, because you might already be working on a match for somebody, and then somebody calls somebody out on Instagram in the most unofficial way ever, but then they still have to read like, okay, it seems like people are perceptive to that. People seem to like that match.
Goes off and it's Dana, and he's like, make that shit happen.
Yeah, and suddenly you got to call the one of the fighters that you were already working on and be like, hey, change your plans.
Mickey Mouse gives you a call.
Mickey Mouse. Man, so no, for sure, it would be so fun, but probably challenging to matchmake. We would definitely walk away from that with a lot more gray hairs, for sure.
That's got to be like what is that, air traffic controller type job, I bet, dude. Like so much shit, like planes are just like almost crashing like all fucking all the time, though. You have no idea what's going on.
Yep. So let's move on to our co-main event. Gregory Rodriguez gets it done, finishes Chidi Njoduani in the second round via ground and pound. This was the standout fight. We didn't even really talk about that cut on Yadong very much, but if we want to talk about cuts, dude, this is the worst shit I've ever seen, man. Like,
well, Yadong, that's like a classic. Like, there was no excuse for, like, of course, and credit to the doctor and credit to Herb Dean, because the doctor told him, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna let him fight, but you fucking watch it. And then Herb was like, okay, I'll watch it. And then credit to Sandhagen, because there's a lot of dirty shit that goes on with these guys. Like like we've seen in the past, where you fucking who did we see it with recently? I'm blanking on the names, but they'll put their forehead in it. Like Volkanovski did it to Max, where that cut was there over his eye, and then Volk was like, "Ooh, that looks bad, Max. That looks bad." And then you
Would
see
be a shame if somebody opened that up.
Yeah, and then he's like putting his brow, and then not only is he putting his brow, he's going down and up, down and up, down and up, like opening it up over his eye. And that's the best fighter in the world. That sounds like some dirty fucking shit to do, but these guys they train to do it. So, and that shit was right over Song's eye, and it was like it looked like he got up, and it was like his eye was full of blood, like a shot glass full of blood in his eye socket. So,
yeah, and I think that ultimately he lost that fight between rounds, because the difference being because somebody asked this of me, like, that other guy's cut was way worse. Referencing Gregory Rodriguez, but Song's they weren't able to get the bleeding to stop. I mean, it seemed like they did, but it looked like the doctor, before he let him go out for the 5th round, was like, "Okay, I see your cut. Make a face for me. Let's distort."
Okay, so we're talking about eyes. We're talking about a certain race group with guys, so it's like, is it closed, is it not? But then the thing about it too was it was fucking swollen too, so it was like a canopy of blood just going straight into his eye. And it was affecting him too, because you would see, like, he would get up, or he would fight his way up from like a grappling exchange. They'd scramble, and then he couldn't see. You would see he'd have to turn to the left so that he could see out of his left eye to like get out of that scramble without taking too much damage, which is like, oh, he just can't fucking see on the other side of his face.
He made him kind of like distort his face a little bit, and then the blood just came, and he's like, all right, I can't send you out there. The cut man, he didn't do it for you, man. And
he did a good job, because that cut came pretty. What was it, in like the 3rd round or 2nd round that up elbow came? And credit to Sandhagen, because that was I love that shit. I love those fucking straight in. Those are those ONE FC elbows you see where it's just that fucking straight up. And man, he deserved it. It's not exactly like the Conor McGregor calling doctor stoppage. That's like a legit. He caused that 120 fucking 1,000%. It's not like the guy's leg fucking snapped. Like, he completely. So, yeah.
And it's so underrated. Dudes who can throw standing elbows like very effectively that don't have you held up against the clinch. Gloves.
I feel like people don't do it as much, because you see it in like maybe ONE FC, like the super, like the super kickboxing, where they wear the big gloves, and so like it's easier to guard against shit like that on your eyes and your forehead, because you got those huge gloves there. But when you watch ONE FC, when it's the Muay Thai guys doing it with the 4-ounce gloves, those guys are fucking chucking elbows, right, because they know, like, I'm gonna push. How the fuck is your hand, how is your 2 wrists going to stop this? It's not. So the fact that we don't see that more, like fucking Tony Ferguson made a fucking living off of that shit. Like, the fact that we don't see that more is wild.
Yeah. And I really admire when they can do it, like, in space too. So we see a lot of really clean elbows coming out of the clinch when dudes are up against the cage.
Boxing,
but when you see a guy, like, it's so underrated, because it's hard to it's a whole different thing than throwing a punch, obviously, because your arm's bent. You don't have the same reach. So when you see a guy throwing a really well timed standing elbow, like, he made a read in order to land that. Like, that wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna swing this because it's in my arsenal. Like, that's a more short range offense. So but yeah, he caught him perfectly.
And it's a lot different than a ground and pound elbow, where his head's up against the mat and he can't really move. Song Yadong has good head movement. He's in the pocket, he's moving, he's feinting, and so Sandhagen had to feint, move. He must have calibrated that somehow to like time that as perfect as it landed in that spot. That's exactly what he was trying to do, and he did it. So that's gorgeous. That's amazing.
Brutal cut. But anyways, yeah, back to the co-main event, which we needed to get into. We needed to talk about that cut, since we were gonna get into a gnarlier cut. This is, like I mentioned earlier, fairly desensitized to the things you see in MMA, and even to cuts, really. Like, we've seen classic, like gnarly cuts. Marvin Eastman, like the classic throwback one of the just huge gash. And we've seen long cuts, we've seen deep cuts. Yes. This was a laceration. Like, they're all lacerations, but this was like when that still image that I've been seeing on Instagram for the last 2 days, which please people stop posting it. It's disgusting. Where you can see his vein. Oh my God. I saw the most hilarious comments on Reddit where somebody was like, you don't really need the meat between your eyes if you really think about it.
Yeah. Why is that even there?
But yeah, it just looks so torn open. Like, you see some cuts, case in point, Song Yadong's cut, that it was, I mean, well, how do you call a cut clean? But it's a slit, really.
Boxing, you watch boxing, you watch kickboxing, you've seen that cut. Look at Nick Diaz. Those guys, they're called scar tissue because of those cuts.
Yeah, exactly. Gregory Rodriguez's cut was going in multiple directions. It had
like four-way stop. Dude.
Yeah, it had it was mostly vertical, but right in the middle, horizontal, but right in the middle, it was also vertical.
Was amazing. Chidi hit him with a fucking beautifully timed knee straight to the fucking right between the eyes. That's like a cartoon one where the fucking birds are flying in and out of the cage. And then he made that face too. They had it in slow motion where he just was like, what the fuck? And his head flew back and his neck flew back. And he was just dazed. So for him to come back the way he did, especially.
Swolbama is a monster. It's hard to break down this fight. For one, I'm not a trained striker or anything like that, so anytime I try to break down what's happening, the tit for tat in that fight, it's always kind of from a casual perspective. But this fight
he parried the left check hook. Exactly. He came under and he glanced to the left but came over on top right.
And he really likes that check. This fight was all chaos. It's really hard to come
was just wild.
And both guys in the first round, both guys had their moments. There was swings and momentum where I thought to myself, dude, if Chidi just pours it on a little bit more, he's going to get the stop here. And I said it in our group chat. And, right now, Gregory Rodriguez is the only guy who I believe when he says, you need to kill me. Because, dude, if anybody, most other fighters had a mirror and saw that fucking gash on their face, they're probably hoping for the doctor
or the
to
faces
stop
of your corner. Imagine you sit down and then they're like, what are you looking at? And he's like, nothing, dude, you're good. He's like, no, we gave a look. What's that look about? Nothing, dude.
I could see a vein right now. I could see part of of what you're made up of that sends blood to and from your heart. By the way, before I forget, I don't believe that Gregory Rodriguez was born in 1992, dude.
You don't think so?
I'm looking at him.
You're forcing yourself not to?
I'm forcing myself not to, I guess, because I just thought he was. I thought he was older than he is, man. He's only 30 years old. He's got an old face, man. Yeah. And I mean, somebody who's in their early to mid 20s are probably like, "What are you talking about?" He looks like a 30-year-old to me. But no, I had him pegged for being in his mid to late 30s. I thought he was a little bit of a late bloomer, but no, to see 1992 and see that face, he's got the LeBron James thing going on. I love that nickname, by the way. So he turns it around, he comes out, and I think his corner also probably told him, he's like, listen, you got one more shot at this. You're probably not going to see a round 3 if you don't finish it in this second round, because there's no fucking way a doctor is going to send you out there twice with that fucking vagina that you got between your eyes.
Well, and also he just is, his head is on a straight fucking line. Even in the best of times when he's up striking, he's not. They call him RoboCop. Also, was another nickname that he has, and it's not because it is because he's a killer, but it's also because it's just his neck and head do not move.
Diffused,
and it's just right there. So it wasn't well, let's talk about So Cory had to do quite a bit. Cory Sandhagen had to do quite a bit of kind of hit a moving target. Where Chidi just. I throw my knee anywhere near this guy's center line, and I'm gonna hit him. So,
yeah, it's much more predictable. I mean, Gregory Rodriguez, incredibly scary, but still very incredibly flawed. Very, very hittable. Like you mentioned, keeps his head up on a pole. and is always just coming straight at you. Really, there's not
Right.
very much in the way of like evasion, and he's not giving you too many looks, too much lateral movement. It's back and
Yeah.
forth, and it's not very, and it's easy to criticize. I say back and forth, and it's like, yeah, don't ever move back in straight lines when you're striking, but there's no moving back. Gregory Rodriguez, he just wants to bring violence to you. It's like he is what Justin Gaethje has been promising to do for the last few years, like the kind of like fight that Justin Gaethje tries to sell people on is like, oh, I create car crashes. I just come forward and I bring violence. It's like, that's nice, and you've tried to do that, and it's it's easy to criticize when he's fighting in the lightweight division too. At middleweight, Gregory Rodriguez is doing that, and I want to ask you his ranking right now. Sorry,
Joaquin Buckley.
There you go. The Joaquin Buckley's
I'll answer the question for you. Let's have a meme fight. Joaquin Buckley and Gregory Rodriguez. Let's just fucking do it, because that'll be some wild shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. That just high-powered offense, not very much defense. That is an amazing co-main event for any fucking card.
Yeah.
Again. And I don't mean to keep sticking him in the co-main event, but I don't know where I stand on Gregory Rodriguez, because I'm torn, because I don't feel very highly or think very highly of the middleweight
Whatever
division.
he's done it at middleweight. Oh,
He's
great.
yeah.
You made your point. You were making your point, yeah.
Yeah.
And the best of Gregory Rodriguez has been at middleweight. So it's like, what is that really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's kind of, the jury's out as to whether or not I picture him like going into contendership, because we hear a lot about his ground game, and it's kind of like the old school Aldo thing, where it's like, apparently he's better on the ground, but he doesn't seem very interested in using it, or he'll only use it to deliver more violence. He's not trying to look for a sub or get anybody out of there without any marks on their face. But tough night for Chidi Njoduani. I thought he was going to have it. I picked him, and I picked him on verdict also, because sometimes my verdict picks don't match like the picks that I make on the show, just because I'm either like chasing points. I'm just trying to get belts on verdict,
Right.
But I picked Chidi on the show and on verdict. And in that first round, man, I was like, okay, it's in the bag. Here we go. I was right. I feel so good being right. And I was not right at all, man.
No, and it's a middleweight division in the UFC, so these guys aren't out of it, and Chidi's not all the way out of it, and Rodriguez isn't all the way back in there, right in the tie. It's just, it is what it is right there. So
yeah,
Joaquin Buckley and Chidi
all about it,
and Gregory Rodriguez is just too good, and then they're close together. I mean, they're a couple weeks split. Let's get these guys on with Cheeto and Sandhagen. Goddamn, that would be amazing.
A Just Bleed fight night for sure. Let me not to force you to match make for Chidi Njoduani, since he came up short here.
Yeah.
But if you want to, if you don't already have somebody on the tip of your tongue that you think would be interesting,
I did, and I was going to rely a little bit more on you, who you thought, because I had a hard time, because I did this beforehand. I do that little mental exercise, and then I was like, ooh, Gregory Rodriguez, Joaquin Buckley, and I didn't want to think about the middleweight division any more than I have to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, damn. So what do you think? Let's hear what you got to think, because it's going to be a lot more educated and, make more sense than anything I have.
I don't know about educated, and I didn't have one in the chamber, but I was going to say we can kind of go through. I have the
Let's go through it together. Let's do it together then.
I have the middleweight rankings up in front of me, and this is a fight that I think would be great. He's already booked though, but I do think that he's high. He's ranked a little higher than I thought he would be at this point. Dricus du Plessis still knocks.
Oh, he's booked, and he's booked in
Darren
he's
Till.
Very booked. Yeah, he's very booked.
Yeah, he's got Darren Till in December. I think that would be a really, really fun fight, and I think they're kind of counting on Dricus being he is fan friendly already.
He's
no,
a fucking Terminator,
but yeah, they want him to kind of cross over, because he's already ranked the number 11, at least on Tapology, and he's not bad at all, but he's still a guy who I would have pegged for around the 15 to 20 range. But Chidi, and let me look at Chidi Njoduani's record really quick to make sure he hasn't already fought this guy. No, I would like to see Chidi Njoduani versus Brad Tavares. I think that'd be a fun one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a name that I did not expect you to say, but when you did, it made a lot of sense.
Although I'm looking at it, and Brad Tavares is ranked above RoboCop right now, so it also doesn't make a whole ton of sense.
But it's
like we said, matchmaking's hard.
Yeah. Who else?
Bruno Silva would be a good one.
Yeah, we just saw Bruno just fought too, right? And
he's booked too. Yeah, he's booked in December. Albert Duraev.
Oh wow. Well, that's two names that you just throw them out.
Well, anyways, a lot of ways, a lot of directions.
Happy holidays, Chidi.
Yeah, enjoy that.
Enjoy that. You want to get a little extra cash for the holidays? It looks like it's gonna be a tough one. They'll find someone for him. Some contender series schmuck.
Andre Fili, Bill Algeo. Andre Fili gets the split decision. This was one where I guess I can kind of agree with the split decision. I could have seen it go either way. That third fight was the tough one because it's like, what do you value more? It's like I said in our group chat, like nobody on this night has any respect for rear naked chokes because Bill Algeo was kind of deep in one. Had his back taken for a majority of the third round.
He was fucking very what's the word I'm looking for? He was getting some results from because you see dudes throw those fists behind him just to like a wing and a prayer, literally just trying to fucking get this guy to stop. And he was actually like you would have to give him scoring or like that. Those were like significant strikes almost.
Yeah,
he was hitting Andre with.
Yeah, he landed enough of them that you just can't ignore it. It was a thing where it's like, okay, I understand that he's being controlled and the submission threat is looming, but normally when we see people throw those punches from that position, that's desperate, like, oh, fuck a rear naked choke, my goal is to just punch you in the face as hard as possible. Dudes will take like 3 of those and be like, nah, stop that, and shift to the other side or make them work for it a little bit. Andre Fili, I don't know if he had kind of like put everything into that choke attempt and kind of gassed himself out a little bit and was just holding on, but he was content to just lay there and take like 15. I didn't count them, but it easily was 15 at least.
It was at least 10. Yeah.
So I think there is an argument there that like I wouldn't fault anybody if they wanted to give that round to Bill Algeo. I would need to rewatch it because I know that the submission threat was real. Like he had it almost locked in a few times, but I don't know, man. Like he got out of it, and I think you kind of have to credit fighters for also escaping from a fully locked in rear naked choke. Like you get credit for that in my book. Maybe style points over anything else. And you certainly don't get more credit than the guy who almost finished the fight with a rear naked choke. But it's not worth nothing to be able to get out of that because, like we saw earlier in the night, like you can hold on for dear life. Usually, when you're under the chin, you're dead to rights. It's over. That's a wrap. Andre Fili, man. He's been around for a while, and he's still never shaken the newcomer vibe for me. He's the guy who's just always felt like, oh, he's Andre Fili.
He's kind of come full
still on the rise.
Like, he might be that Edson Barboza type guy, where he's like he's going to be fighting the up and coming guys at featherweight, and if they could beat Andre Fili, then feather in their cap because he's great. If he doesn't, or if he beats them, then okay, good. A little bit closer to the title shot, but you're never gonna get it. You know, it's the kind of deal where that's what it feels like for me. Where it was with Edson Barboza, where there's just enough heat on him, but the right losses at the right times kind of, took him out of it. They pay Andre Fili a lot too, considering it's the UFC. He's been in there. That was his like 19th appearance, right? Something like that.
It would take me a little bit to count the fights, but he debuted in 2013, so it's about to be 10 years. And it's crazy to me. It still feels like 5 years ago.
That's older than my daughter. Yeah. Jesus fucking Christ. And he's a Sacktown guy, so it's like, dang.
Yeah, I'm looking at his record right now, and not to write off, the guys with green next to their name in Andre Fili's record, but it really is kind of feels like one of those classic cases where anytime he's come up against somebody that has kind of been like that next step up, he's come up short. He's lost to Bryce Mitchell, Sadiq Youssef. We're both big on Sadiq Youssef.
I'm big, yeah. Sadiq Youssef is like that guy for me. Bryce Mitchell too is just fucking skinny Habib, or what do they call him?
Redneck Habib. Michael Johnson, which, I mean, yeah, Michael Johnson's almost
Anybody.
become a
I
meme,
mean,
but
Michael
that guy can
Johnson
fuck up
knocked out
anybody's
Mike
days.
Tyson. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't fucking matter. Like, that guy, that is one dude. Like, when you see like those fucking stupid memes that they put, or like you can tell we're gonna see a lot of them because there's no fights coming until the first. So we're gonna see a lot of these fucking memes where it's like, it's your birthday month. The fighter on your birthday month is the guy who's gonna have your back in a bar fight, and it's like it's always fucking, I don't know. It's always fucking somebody you don't want. It's always like a Diaz brother or something. You're just like, fuck.
Patty Pimlet's definitely going to be on.
Yeah, yeah.
Chael Sonnen probably.
Yeah, I would want Michael Johnson, like just randomly. Like if I had to if I had to walk through downtown Fresno with somebody, it would be Michael Johnson. Like I would have to go with him.
I would be perfectly content with Michael Johnson. I would be fucking eastbound and down Stevie for Michael Johnson. Like I would be like, fuck that
depends.
guy.
Yeah, Mike's gonna be like, hey man, are we cool? That depends. Were you driving?
Yeah. So Michael Johnson, Calvin Kattar, Yair Rodriguez, Max Holloway. Andre Fili has been in there with some of the best that this featherweight division has had to offer. And come up short, but not without being consistent. I mean, he's still won more than he's lost. He has a fan friendly style. He's really dynamic. Like, how do I even describe his
another guy
style?
like you talked about with Sandhagen, where it's like you put him on a fight night, okay. Like if I think about it as like, okay, am I going to have to barbecue before or during?
Yeah.
Because like kind of deal. Like when am I going to be fucking barbecuing? Because if it's a card that Andre Fili's on, I'm going to, and Andre Fili and Cory Sandhagen. So with this one, I made sure like that shit was resting at 150 by the time the fucking main card was on, dude. Because like I'm not gonna be running out checking on shit when these guys are fighting. So
absolutely, yeah, that's a really great way to put it. It's like, yeah, regardless of how invested you are into Andre Fili's trajectory within his division or the stakes that are attached to any fight or matchup that he finds himself in, you want to be in front of the TV to catch an Andre Fili fight for sure.
Yeah.
Did you?
There's some guys you can just, and that's weird to say in fighting, especially when ones that are like 3-rounders, but you can kind of like leave the room and come back, and it's kind of going to be in the same spot that it was, where his fights are never, he's fucking on top of someone, like, and they're carrying all his weight, or he's on the ground trying to throw up a triangle, or he's fucking just like in the pocket punching like a motherfucker. So he's an exciting ass motherfucker.
Or he's had this guy dead to rights in a rear naked choke for the better part of a round, and he's getting punched in the face. The good old punch in the face defense to the rear naked choke. It's one of my favorite escapes when I used to do jiu-jitsu. It's like,
right.
Yeah. Does the guy have a fully locked in rear naked choke on you? Just punch over your shoulder. It's the best way to get
everybody does that.
Did you happen to see Joe Pyfer's knockout on the Contender Series?
Yes. That is crazy that you brought that up. Yes. And it looked the exact same as this, which was wild. This is very weird for me because I've watched the contender series sporadically, where like it has to be right place, right time for me, and I happened to see him fight both times on the contender series, and it was pretty crazy. That was such a smooth knockout. That's like a fucking video game knockout that he had. Like he did it against someone who's not very good, but at the same time, it's like I couldn't do that. Not many guys can. Even a really shitty MMA fighter doesn't get knocked out like that.
Yeah.
And he didn't need a follow-up. He gave him a follow-up, but he didn't need to give him one. That guy was out cold. He was astro traveling, had no idea where the fuck he was.
Yeah. Reminiscent of like Derek Lewis levels of calling your shot, or just knowing like this fight should go this way, and then it does, and you're just not even surprised.
And in the first round, he missed with that punch, and I was like, whoa, shit, that guy got lucky there.
Like you mentioned, we have to point out this was this was I think the matchmakers kind of wanted to. I don't
They
want to
didn't.
discredit Joe Pyfer so much, but this was a very manufactured outcome, like as close as you can get. Because Alen Amedovski was 0-3 in the UFC, and it's now 0-4, and probably going to get his walking papers. So if you want this result, like this is the kind of matchup that you make for Joe Pyfer.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But I mean, it's a perfectly fair matchup because at the same time, Alen he was only 3 fights deep into the UFC, and now fighting a guy who's about to make his UFC debut. So I can't say that like it's a crazy mismatch, or like, oh, you're gonna make this guy who's just making his debut fight a guy who's 15 fights deep into the UFC or anything like that.
They know what they're doing.
They knew, Alen Amedovski, not too much upward trajectory there. And credit to Joe Pyfer, though. He still needed to fucking have the power to have that done. Looking like a middleweight Justin Gaethje. A lot of people have already made the comparison. It's certainly not an original thought. And yeah, like a company man. A blooming company man.
Well, literally fought for a sandwich. Wasn't he homeless or something like that?
Yeah, you alluded to. I don't know so much about his background. Like you mentioned, I don't really make time for the Contender Series. I'm not that I have much to do on most Tuesday nights.
He was on the Bo Nickel card. That's why I caught him.
Yeah,
he was like, yeah.
I mostly remember. I didn't see that one. I watched his knockout since then. It was the highlights were all over the place, but Joe Pyfer definitely made it on my radar when Dana White was telling everybody, if you want to make it in this sport, be Joe Pyfer. And it's like, oh, who's this Joe Pyfer guy? And without knowing what Joe Pyfer looked like, just
you kind of like guessed it.
Exactly.
Like you played Guess Who?
I knew exactly what he was going to look like. Oh, it's a generic white man who likes to scrap.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly what he is. But I'm not gonna fucking shit on Joe Pyfer. He got it done, and I think he's gonna be an exciting division to this middleweight middleweight division.
Boston, that South Boston juvenile hall like security guard face kind of guy. Yeah.
I need you to come with me. We're gonna hurt some people. You can't ask me any questions. Whose car are we taking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So excited to see more of Joe Pyfer in this division going forward. Not going to match make for him because it's like I don't even know where you put him in the rankings.
I would love to see sorry to go back one, but I would love to see our boy Nate Landwehr and Andre Fili fight. That would be pretty cool.
That would be a really cool matchup right there. And they both fought really recently too, so I think it times itself really well. Like it feels when matchmaking, like it always feels. I've heard like some of the I watch some other MMA like programming and shows and stuff like that where they do matchmaking, and I hear the criticism sometimes where it's like, well, of course you'd say that guy just fought recently, but like, of course, because it makes sense. Like it's easier to matchmake guys when they've fought close together in time. Like if this dude fought 2 weeks ago and this guy just fought, they're probably going to be ready to go around the same time if neither guy sustained any significant injuries. So no, I like that. That doesn't scream recency bias at all.
Yeah. But no, I would like to see that just because you got Landwehr who's like a European type of, a Russian sensation in one guy, and then fucking Andre Fili who's like made his bones in the UFC. Like let's just fucking see it,
Mm-hmm. Let's touch on because we've mentioned it a few times, and I don't have a whole lot to say about the matchup or who either girl is going to fight moving forward. But we got to talk about that choke. Gillian Robertson really goes through fire and brimstone in that first match, in the first round against Mariya Agapova. Eats like, I also didn't count them, but maybe like 15 elbows to the side of the head.
It was straight to the fucking ear. Yeah, if she didn't have fucking cauliflower ear, dude, like she's gonna have it.
That's the kind of punishment that will make you forget your mother's maiden name for sure.
Exactly,
like,
dude.
And to me, it looked like she was kind of fading in that position too. Mm-hmm. Like towards the end of that, I was like, okay, how many more of these can you take? And I was like, okay, pay attention to it. Like I wanted to get a better look of her face because I was like, this could be getting it done. I mean, they're 125-pound women, but those are sharp elbows, man. And Mariya Agapova is tall for the division and lanky.
She's big.
So she has the length to make those effective. Whereas sometimes you see them, if we saw Loma Luke Boonmi, who also fought a little later in the night, who's like 5'0", or maybe 5'1" or something, doing the same thing. She just doesn't have as much distance on her limbs to create that leverage. No, yeah, Mariya Agapova really put it on her in the first round, but Gillian Robertson, aggressive, was not hiding the fact that she wanted no part of the stand up and was trying to desperately get it to the ground. She did so in round 2, and Agapova, we went back to that straight up who needs rear naked choke defense when I can just try and punch you in the face. And twitching,
or just bite your fucking tongue off.
You bite your tongue off.
Psychopath.
Fight your own hands.
That's like when you see like a bear trap and like a raccoon got caught in a bear trap, or like a fox, and they just chew their arm off. Like, oh no, it's just a bear trap. I'll chew my arm off.
Yeah, but if I chewed my tongue off right here, they're gonna have to have the doctor take a look at it, and what are they gonna put us back in the same position?
She was foaming at the mouth.
She was. Yeah, she went all the way out. For my money, I think she was out for a bit longer than what it seemed like.
There was some oxygen not in her brain.
Yeah, Gillian Anderson said in the post-fight, her scrum, that she was pretty sure that she was out probably closer to like 5, 6, 7 seconds. But yeah, it seemed like Mariya Agapova's body was still potentially like spazzing out. Kind of giving the illusion that she was still active, because like a lot of people noticed it too. She kind of like was making motions like she was trying to fight the choke and fight the hands, but she was fighting her own hands. Like she wasn't like going for them like so.
Brendan Schaub, like trying to fucking
shoot on the ref.
Up shoot up. Jesus Christ! Any chance they could get.
Let me look. Mariya Agapova's record in the UFC now. She's sitting at 3-2. At flyweight, at bantamweight, she could probably still stick around, but at flyweight, that division's getting a bit deeper every day. So, and she's also came up short against some other girls who weren't necessarily like considered contenders or setting the world on fire. Your Shayna Dobsons and Gillian Robertson. Gillian Robertson was, I mean, I thought she was going to come out of this fight 10-8.
Gillian Robertson, watching the beginning of that fight was like, whoa, WMMA is just so hit and miss. Not to shit on it, like, you know what I mean? Because it's still a growing sport, but it's just hit and miss sometimes. These records, and then the records, good and bad, don't tell the whole story either. So.
That's also true. Yeah, you get a lot of. I mean, it's for a lot of times for girls in regional MMA before they get to the bigger stage. It's hard to find fights sometimes. You see a lot of girls taking fights that don't make any sense for them, and you think to yourself, like, if you're just looking at the record on Tapology and you see that and you think, why did you fight that girl when you were only 3 fights into your career? But it comes down to, like, I needed to fight somebody, and it's WMMA. And if you go to a regional or local MMA card, there's probably one WMMA fight on the card, and I needed to make money. So
well, there's a gal who's in the UFC now, and like she's most known for like viral footage, like fighting in like a strip mall against a chick with like that Karen haircut, remember? And she's like poking in between her gloves and like kind of scared, and she has like that weird blonde like Karen Bob haircut, and she's wearing like fucking like she's taking her kids to soccer practice, and then she just gets the shit kicked out of her, and they're at like some mall, and now the other chick's in the UFC now. So it's like, what the fuck?
I'm trying to remember who that was. I almost want to say Tabitha Ricci. I'm pulling up her record.
I think
right now.
You're right. Yeah.
Shauna Ormsby.
Exactly the video I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, the soccer mom where she was like with the no brand rash guard and shit. Like she looked like.
Well, didn't they have a soccer mom fight Cyborg too? What was that chick's name? Remember, she just like she had fought like a bunch of like female one of Cyborg's. Oh, this is years back. One of Cyborg's fighters like just completely like took like wouldn't take the fight or bowed out or something happened, and they couldn't find a late minute replacement, and then it was like she was literally like driving a minivan with kids to soccer practice a couple of days, and she's fighting Cyborg on fucking co-main. It's like, what the fuck?
I don't remember exactly I don't remember the fight you're talking about, but yeah, it happens in WMMA, and that's part of what makes WMMA kind of exciting too. I'll admit, like, it's kind of evil to think about that too, but For
I
as
like it because it's free money sometimes. Let's just call it what it is, Doc. I mean, I broke it down my Jimmy the Brandon the Greek system, and it's like, well, okay, she's a plus 9,000 favorite. Just fucking take it because that's free money. You
yeah.
gonna walk by $7 and not pick it up? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And for the same reason, you see some girls getting put into matches where they do not belong or they are not ready yet. You also see some like quick movement through divisions the other way too, where it's like you can get invested in a girl early on and be like, oh, she's already about to make a UFC debut or she's found herself fighting. So it's kind of exciting. Where if you kind of find some random male fighter like from the LFA who you like are a fan of and want to get invested in, you have no idea when and if he will ever see a UFC contract, you know.
Yeah.
But with WMMA, I feel like it's a little bit easier to kind of see like a girl's career trajectory. So it's interesting in that respect. That probably wraps up what we have to talk about for Fight Night Sandhagen versus Yadong. But there was some other flavor of combat sports over the weekend that I wanted to give you a chance to talk about. If you wanted to touch on the Saul Canelo Alvarez fight versus Gennady Golovkin. I am not a boxing guy. I don't watch very much boxing. I've probably seen a grand total of 2, maybe 3 Canelo fights.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I haven't watched very much.
That's like the most surprising thing you said since we've been doing this fucking podcast. Okay.
I don't watch much boxing. I think one of them was definitely the Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
I don't believe I saw either of his previous fights with Triple G, because
No?
I don't think I've seen a Triple G
man.
fight. Maybe the highlights. I'm not sure because I didn't know going into this fight. I watched
This was
it.
the only fight Triple G legit lost.
That's what I was hearing. Yeah, and it certainly looked it so. And it was no surprise to me. A lot of fucking bullshit with the scoring.
Yeah,
because I watched that fight, and this always
Scary.
happens whenever I give boxing a chance. It's not the reason I don't watch boxing. I'm just not invested in it.
Me and you
Just-
together, we're gonna watch Bud Crawford, Errol Spence.
Okay, I'm down. Yeah, I mean, I'll watch any boxing match if
I'm
someone
so excited for that.
if
Oh
someone
my
says like,
God,
"Hey,
dude.
this is a good boxing match coming up. Watch this one." I'm like, "Okay, I value that." So I
the
need
guy
somebody
that
to tell
beat
me what to
Canelo-
look at.
The guy that beat Canelo Bivol is amazing. That guy is crazy good. Alexander Usyk is just on a different fucking level. Everybody knows Tyson Fury, you know.
Yeah,
That guy's wild as fuck. Anthony Joshua, is Anthony Joshua kind of deal. Lomachenko, there's guys out there that Michael B. Jordan. There's
Creed.
no, but yeah.
I was wondering what the hell Michael B. Jordan was doing in the ring too.
Well,
I was like, I can't be the
Canelo's-
only MMA fan who's like watching boxing or like for the rare.
Killmonger's there.
Because I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, okay, I'm gonna tell you what every other person who like almost exclusively watches MMA but is taking a look at the boxing match tonight is thinking.
Yeah.
So what is Michael B. Jordan doing in the ring right now? And are they going to address it?
Canelo's in the next movie, right? Canelo just signed up to be in the next Creed movie.
Yeah, they reminded me that he was Creed and that, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But to me, like, if you're watching a UFC card and fucking Michael B. Jordan is randomly standing into the cage, like, there's going to be a whole segment dedicated to that. There's no just we're not even gonna, because he was just standing there the whole time, and there wasn't even a part where they were like, and of course, this is Michael B. Jordan here to promote the next Creed, so. Yeah, like boxing is just the amount of characters that are just standing
Bruce Buffer
around
would have did
in
like
boxing.
a whole like coming up in theaters March 33rd. Michael B. Jordan, like they would have said the whole fucking thing. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. You would have got an interview with Joe Rogan at ringside and shit.
Yeah.
But breakdown. If you have a
really
breakdown
wasn't
for it,
anything to break down. As far, Teddy Atlas or Max Hillerman could definitely break it down like how it went, but it was just very weird. Canelo came out super quick and just started fucking putting it, and you kind of got like a dreading feeling like, oh shit, what the fuck. But Triple G's, he will never get knocked out, never. I remember in the first Canelo Triple G fight. Canelo hit him with this right hand that was just like it should have killed anyone. Like it should have and could have killed anyone. And then you can go back. I'm pretty sure if we looked at it online, there's like a GIF or a video just showing like Triple G's whole his head, and like you could see his spine kind of readjust a little bit, and his head turned to the right, and then he just stepped right back, was in the pocket, and was like moving his head. It was like that guy is just other like, and he's like he was Dagestani before Habib. He was like the Dagestani Savage before Habib, or Kazakhstani Savage, like before those guys were, we're talking about the Caucasus Mountains motherfuckers. Like that guy was like the penultimate.
He's putting Eurasians on the map for a while.
Savage, yeah, dude. And he was I remember he was just a fucking killer's killer. But it was always like on European time, kind of hard to like, like just same as like Tyson Fury too, like those European fighters. It's hard to really, and especially like outside of like American, American middleweights, American welterweights, American heavyweights, you just don't care. No one gives a fuck in America, really. Yeah. So then this was he legit lost, but he came on strong towards the end, and then the last 2 rounds he just gassed, which normally it's pretty much it's almost the opposite of what you'd see, where he'd come out hot and fast and just smacking Canelo around, and then Canelo would just kind of settle in and end it because he has really good cardio and can just go for his really great defense. But it was just a very money fight, really. What we saw was just a money fight. Canelo's got to get his belt back from Bivol. Triple G's just kind of floating out there as, what's next for him. And it looked like he hit the wall. And when you see boxers hit the wall, it just falls off right away. It's not we see it in MMA too, where it's not gradual, where you see like a basketball player 2 or 3 years, where like Vince Carter went from like this crazy ass dunker to like on the perimeter, good shooter, will still get 30 points, but just in a different way. And then he's coming off the bench out of nowhere, like on 7 different teams in 7 different years. And like in boxing, that just like one fight, you're Vince Carter on fucking Toronto, and then the next fight, you're Vince Carter on the fucking Sacramento Kings, just like fucking trying to get fucking 7 points and like teach the young guys like some. So, and we just saw it in that fight.
Yeah,
like in the middle of that fight.
Yeah, and going into this fight, I didn't realize till I put the fight on and I heard them talking about it. I didn't know that Triple G was 40. I didn't have any idea how old he was. He kind of once they said that, I was like, okay, he kind of looks 40. He looks in the face. He's gonna have
his hairline especially.
Yeah, I don't know if I made the same joke to you that I said to Mike in one of our other chats, but he was out there reminded me of Kid Presentable.
Oh yeah,
but
that's the stinger, Homer. You can't use that anymore.
But I was like you mentioned about him like kind of fading late, and it being that used to be the reverse. I was gonna say, and not because I know that about Triple G. Obviously, I don't know like how his fights tend to go, but I thought that was interesting that he was coming on strong a little later in the fight too, because I was like, well, if he's the 40-year-old fighter, you'd think that he would be coming on strong in the beginning and fading late. Alvarez, but it was really apparent from the get-go that speed advantage that Alvarez had, because I've seen that. I mean, I can't break down Alvarez very much in terms of how he's much different from other boxers.
The one thing that separates Canelo from anyone else is just head movement and defense. Is just I haven't seen that in any iteration of combat sports, whether it's kickboxing, not K1, fucking any level of fucking MMA, boxing. I mean, Floyd Mayweather, of course, and then you got like your older guys, your Sugar Ray Leonards and guys like that. But this is pretty fucking crazy, especially when considering he's doing it on guys that are like, a lot of like Sugar Ray and those guys were fighting guys who were like insurance salesmen or that type of dudes, where this guy's fighting like some pretty wild guys, and he's been doing it since he's a young man too. So.
Fighting guys who are state sponsored by their country, like dudes who just this is their life. It's a deadly combination for sure, because you could see that he's got the speed, the reflexes, and the skill. Where a lot of times, you know, yeah, and not even just talking about boxing. Obviously, I gotta kind of make it MMA related. You see a guy who has the speed, and he makes up for, you know, perceived lack of skill or whatever, because, you know, I don't necessarily have the head movement, but I've got the fucking footwork and the speed, so I'm not going to be there regardless. So you kind of have to give and take. But yeah, Canelo definitely seems to be the whole package. I mean, from what I perceive. It's hard to tell. It's hard to get a sense of his punching power. I've seen a video of him like obliterating a speed bag before.
Yeah,
where it's like, fuck, dude, you did that with a crowd.
Just had like otherworld chin, and he still has otherworld chin.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his thing, was he would be able to stay in the pocket and throw just the straightest, fucking cleanest, most accurate punches ever, and they would just keep fucking hitting you, and you were like throwing everything you had at him out of desperation, because this guy's just not stopping hitting you. He's creating these angles that are fucking wild, and his check hooks are just amazing. And then out of nowhere, you're just like, you just can't take it anymore. You're tired, and this fucking guy's just pounding on you. Where I just think his power's gone, his speed's gone, and then, I mean, you're boxing, so you kind of need, you know.
It's tough too when you're on the very, very peak, when you're at the top of the hill in any combat sport, but I imagine especially boxing, because the longer you spend there, the more tape there is on you, the more guys have been studying you for, you know, for your entire career to beat you once they get to that, you know, get to the top of the hill to challenge you too. And like you said, like when dudes in boxing tend to fall off, you know, fast. Like it's more of a like, okay, here comes the decline. Like not as many guys get second wins. And would you say that is because of the how do I say this, like limited offense of boxing relative to mixed martial arts? You know what I mean? Like there is only so many things that you can do to counter the punches, you know, the multitude of punches that you can throw in MMA, and that's it. Where it's like you are more reliant on your speed and your reflexes, and once those things start to go, it's not like you can have this career resurgence because you started to rest on your or fall back on your grappling or wrestling, like in MMA, where it's like, no, dude, you're only coming in here to do one thing, and that's box. And there are different styles of boxing, but they're all built on a certain set of fundamentals and physical characteristics. And once you start to lose that physical side of things, then it's like it's downhill.
I'm not quite sure exactly. It's a lot harder for me to tell. And you made a very good point, where is you can kind of see certain fighters like leaning on things or not using things that they used to have, where like you saw with like Shogun Rua, where he was a fucking pretty wild ass fucking Muay Thai guy back in the day, and then he started, you know, he kind of switched to more of like a or not, I don't want to say a grappler, but just like a brawler type. You know, the guys who just like the skill kind of leaves, but they can always like lean on something else. Yeah, that's a hard question to answer for you, man, because I just, and then you're right with the, you know, a guy like Triple G, like when you get into your 40s, you know, you can start wrestling, or if you're in MMA, you can start wrestling a little bit more, or you can use your, you know, your understanding of the scoring system to kind of like put yourself in plus positions at the right time to like really just kind of outscore a guy. You know, with this, you're just not quite sure exactly where. I think that's why the decline is just so abrupt, and so it just happens. You just see it, because you're right. There's just nothing else you can really do. There's no calf kick that you can just kind of pull out of your ass, or, you know, you're right.
I know. No. Yeah. No. Yeah. That was an interesting one though, and I do kind of want to watch more boxing, but
dude, dude, if you want to watch boxing, dude, watch like Marvin Hagler. Fuck, dude. I watched a few different documentaries on that guy. I think every movie, everybody's doing a Marvin Hagler impersonation, and no one wants to admit it.
Really?
That guy was fucking amazing, dude. Marvelous Marvin Hagler is amazing. Just the best. For me, like, I went back, I watched like a few documentaries, like Roberto Duran. Oh my god, dude. Fucking evil. That motherfucker was fucking evil. But Marvin Hagler was just perfect. Just absolutely the perfect fighter. If you watch him, it looks like a movie. His physique, his like everything he did was just like a fucking movie. And his only like one of his only real like bad he lost to Sugar Ray Leonard, and it was like when you go back and judge it now, especially with like the way you can kind of slow things down and the angles, and like the commentary being what it was. And Sugar Ray Leonard was a big part of the commentary team at the time. He was a big part of the networks. So, and then it wasn't like now where, okay, so you turn off like we just got done watching Song Yadong and Cory Sandhagen, and then we're gonna watch then we're gonna watch Canelo, and then we're gonna watch college football into the night, and then on your phone if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like everybody was waiting like 3 months just to watch Marvin Hagler fight somebody, and man, he used to, man. I can't even do it any kind of justice over a podcast, dude. If you want to get back into like, or if you just want to see what like a boxer should look like, is Marvelous Marvin Hagler, dude. Amazing.
I'll check it out. I think the long and rich history of boxing is what makes it daunting to me, because part of like what made me.
How do you eat an elephant, dude? It's just one bite at a time, dude.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I just go back. And shout out, I think his name's, man, I don't want to, I think it's like Joseph Vincent, I think his name is, or Joseph Vincent, or Tony Vincent, and it's called Board Films, and he does these documentaries that are very well put together, and then you just makes you want to watch more, so then I go back and watch more. But man, like, he does some amazing fucking work, dude, on guys, like current guys, Canelo, Dimitri Bivol, Alexander Usyk. He just breaks it down all the way fucking, and it catches you up to speed to where like you have a working knowledge, and then you can kind of go back and work in like chronological order up to like how it is. And he even has it's just gorgeous. But like watching breakdowns of Marvin Hagler and like the Motor City Cobra Hitman Hearns, like the way those dudes fought back in the day, dude. Man, I don't know why more. I'm sure a lot of fighters do, but you could see like a lot of like what Peter Yan does now with like the way Marvin Hagler moves his head. It's amazing. Like a lot of people, that head movement, that bob back, and that hands high, the shoulders weaving, and man, he really put that into perspective for me. It's like, oh, that's where we get a lot of this shit from.
That's interesting too, because boxing's been around for what, over 100 years now, right? Like,
yeah.
How long would you say that we've been in like the modern era of boxing? Would you go back to like the late 70s or 80s, or like
it would have to be the 50s, right?
50s,
60s.
Because like I know way back in the day that you'd hear the stories about like, oh, these guys fought 60 rounds and stuff. It's like, well, that's clearly not the modern era of boxing. But whenever, I guess regardless,
like Jack Johnson or these fucking guys were like literally fought his way out of like slavery or whatever,
or potentially owned a slave. But you know, like, but then you hear regardless of how the meta of boxing might have changed in the last 3, 4, 5 decades, you know what I mean? But yeah, like as far as like these are the rules of boxing now, and we're not going to stray from them too much further, and then it's the product that it's kind of been. I know here in the States we have a fascination with heavyweight boxing, or at least we did historically. When I was a kid, it was all about Mike Tyson and stuff. I mean,
well, now
it was
it's like
post
Tyson or watch that same guy I was telling you about. He has a great documentary on Bud Crawford. And then you go back and just watch Bud Crawford fights, dude. It's so crazy. Like, how is he doing the same thing? Because like anyone can fight. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I can go to Walmart right now and just fucking like, hey motherfucker, what's up? And then like just fucking fight. Like, it's crazy that he's doing that on like the level that he's doing it against the guys that he's doing it against, and he switches like from southpaws in the middle of like a 30-second, and he's like the best southpaw fighter in the world, and he's the best orthodox fighter in the world. It's the craziest fucking things. And then he's fighting, so like he's like the top pound for pound, and then he's fighting the number 3 guy, Errol Spence, and so that's just amazing, dude.
Yeah, I think it would really help to get me into it to do a little bit of a deep dive on the history, because that's kind of what did it for me with MMA. Was when I was just getting into MMA. I mean, I had my brother-in-law
Same.
to tell me about like Pride, what was happening in Pride,
Right.
because I probably would have
Very well
noticed
said.
the UFC eventually on my own.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah, but he was also telling me, he's like, no, this is cool, but over in Japan, now they got some. Those are where the real killers are and stuff. And he started telling me about Fedor and shit, and building that mystique for me. But it was also at the time of like early YouTube. Like I started watching around 2007. I think we talked about it a little bit on one of the previous episodes. So it was easy to go back and kind of catch up on the sport and get a sense. But at that point, it's kind of crazy to think about it, because even back then it felt like, okay, yeah, the sport's relatively young. But
It's crazy for me because you look like a dead ringer for a fucking god damn it, Julio Cesar Chavez. Like that would be your guy. You know what I mean?
I know for sure I watched a Julio Cesar Chavez fight when
Everybody
I was a kid.
has.
I've been in many.
And then
I've been in many
like, getting the
garages.
manula ready for the next day.
There's a bunch of guys standing around in a garage, like waiting
you
for
don't
the
even
fight
know.
and shit.
Compa,
Yeah,
you're just hearing a lot of compa and primos.
I definitely know I watched Julio Cesar Chavez versus Hector Macho Camacho when I was a
same,
kid.
Dude.
Yeah, my dad took me to a fight to watch that, and there was a bunch of guys handing me
My
money
uncle,
and shit.
I'm not going to use the word, but it starts with an F and ends with a ut. For like, I was like, oh, Hector Macho Camacho looks cool, and they're like, get the fuck out of here.
Dude, I had the exact same experience. I'm not even kidding. To me, I'm a little kid, and I'm like, hey, he's got the curl and shit. Like, he reminds me of Razor Ramon.
He's dancing and shit.
Yeah, and
Hey,
yeah,
get this faggot out of my house.
I got the same
was like,
response. It's like,
okay,
oh, you're rooting for the Joto, and I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know, dude. Like, no, yeah.
It just got real quiet. Everybody turned to me, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I mean, he looks cool.
Exactly, yeah.
He's wearing gladiator shorts. I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, that's fucking cool.
And I watched the Tyson Holyfield fight where he bit his ear.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's kind of a testament to like you go back and see how big were certain fights. And it's like me, a kid who didn't know a thing about boxing, was not a fan of boxing there. I still ended up in a garage watching that fight with a bunch of men. So yeah, it's crazy that
I became a man. Our like formative years, dude, spent like listening to like my uncles like say like wildly inappropriate shit in front of a 7-year-old boy, dude. Just like super drunk and just like fucking shark eyes looking at me, like rubbing the top of my head and like feeling like I'm badass for grabbing him a beer.
And I also think back to how many dudes like by the main event were just drunk off their ass and ready to have their money taken because they just had blind faith for any
everybody
Latino fighter.
Grabbing. Yeah, we used to write down the rounds, and then everybody would like want a round, and like I'd get like $5 for my aunt used to do it, but she'd be the house, so like and then it was my scamming ass aunt Rosemary. So everybody's like, how many times did you put 6 down? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how many people got? Because like, I remember like 6 people got the number like round 7. Like, that's not right. Like, there should be 12 pieces of paper here, and like 4 people got round 7, and she won like every year or every time. But yeah, oh man, it's crazy for me to think like how like ingrained in my DNA, because like I guess like the earliest combat sports experiences were boxing, and like my grandpa didn't speak English at all, and we used to sit down and they would watch me, and then god damn, I don't know why, but Univision used to have that like boxing, and then there was a guy who came out like in a devil's mask.
Oh shit.
And and then my grandpa used to be like, fuck yeah, check this shit out. My grandma would be mad, like, why do you make him watch the devil fight on TV? He's like, it's a mask. I gotta look that up, dude. But and then I just remember, but like he didn't speak English, I didn't speak Spanish, but like we would be watching boxing, and then we'd like kind of look at each other, and like he'd give me a glance like, that's good, like that's cool right there, what he just did at school. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like, you know, that's pretty crazy that now that I think about it.
Yeah, I'm fixated right now on the memories of like dudes like starting to like want to get in fights towards the end of the night because they got swindled, not swindled, but you know what I mean, like they were just ride or die to whatever fighter had a Z at the end of their name, and just
and whoever had the most vowels.
Yeah, I remember like even as a teenager when I think De La Hoya was fighting Trinidad or something like that. I feel like you can go into a fucking liquor store
Trinidad,
and
dude.
find
Goddamn.
and you can find action with like any Mexican guy who would be down to be like, hey, want to put $20 on it? And it's like, dude, you don't know me. I'm a child.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a teenager.
Or like my dad trying to like coach me up on the drive home. Like, I had 3 beers. I only had 3 beers. You saw me just had 3. I just had 3 beers. Okay, well, you came back smelling all weird when you went with Vincey to the back. And like, okay, but I didn't smoke any of that. Like, it's like, okay, I get it.
Standing
like,
close to them.
Yeah.
So fucking funny, man.
But so I wouldn't say. I guess I do have watched a little more boxing just because like it was just like trying to be cool with my grandpa, and then my dad was a big boxing fan too. We like Floyd Mayweather. There was a stretch of Floyd Mayweather. I watched every single fight. Well, not me, but like my family, we paid for every single Floyd Mayweather fight, and then my sisters too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember we were all spread out. Like I lived in Sacramento. My other sister lived in another part of Sacramento, and then my other sister moved out to Fresno. Whenever Floyd Mayweather fought, we would all go to my dad's house and we'd watch it. We'd cook and then watch Floyd Mayweather fight. Like Diego Chico Corrales against Floyd Mayweather. I think I've mentioned that to you. I'll send it to you. It's just one of the most amazing, like where it's just different. These two dudes are just different people fighting. And then I guess what is it? The Four Kings, which is like Duran, Hagler, Hearns, and Sugar Ray Leonard, and then like and Julio Cesar Chavez, like the Four Kings, where they're all like around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Those dudes, yeah, just go back and watch those. Roberto Duran, especially, I think he had that one fight where he quit, so it was just, and he kind of like went on for them. He wasn't very good with his money, so he kept going longer than he should have, so it looked bad at the end. But like when he was in his prime, man, fucking evil, dude.
I heard about. I'm pretty sure I probably heard about it on the Rogan podcast about like the video of him where he just like picks up a cat, swings it from its fucking tail, and launches it or something like that.
I had never heard about that, but now that you're bringing it, does ring a bell. But like one thing, like I remember we were watching to kind of bring it into like an MMA context. We were watching Lawler and Brian Barberena and the way they fought in the pocket. And like they did it for like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. This motherfucker fought in the pocket right in front of you. I'm standing right here. You never hit him, or he would want you to hit him in a certain way. And then to like, so that your internal organs were, he knew where he was like going for your internal organs, dude. It was fucking crazy. And then I watched there's documentaries, and then you watch those documentaries, and then you go back to like the single fights that he had. Fucking amazing, dude.
I got a lot of homework to do, man.
I guess there's no fights this week, so.
True. Am I going to make the time to sit in front of the TV and watch boxing?
I
have no excuse not to. It's not
watch Marvelous Marvin Hagler, dude. I guess he used to fucking like put himself in seclusion. He used to go to like this random little, I guess, island or like this part of Massachusetts, and he would just be alone, and he would take like his trainer and another guy, and he'd be all alone where he wouldn't speak to anybody. He couldn't speak to anybody. He couldn't eat anything good. He couldn't, like, it was cold and gross. and he used to put that in and said, like, this is the guy I'm fighting's fault. I would be in the fucking in Las Vegas or Palm Beach or somewhere, but I have to fight this guy. So he brought me here, and I'm gonna make sure he knows he fucking. And it was he was wild. He changed his name because I guess he was fighting with ABC. They wouldn't call him Marvelous Marvin Hagler because they were like because Sugar Ray Leonard was like their guy, and so they wouldn't call him by his nickname. And he's like, "Call me I'm Marvelous Marvin Hagler." And they would just call him Marvin Hagler. So he went and legally changed his name to Marvelous Marvin Hagler. So they had to call him that.
I love that.
Out and fought. Yeah, that's fucking wild. Dude.
I love those kind of stories.
And then he lost, and he really didn't. If you go back, he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, and then he just left and went to Italy and became a movie star and just like stacked fat cheddar.
Before we move on from boxing, I wanted to ask, and if you know, if you don't, if you're not sure, or if how long has there been big money in boxing, or has it always relatively been like that?
I mean, considering like economic, like
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 inflation and all
for
that stuff.
inflation and
Yeah.
shit, it's always been king sport.
Because
So
I hear about the numbers that certain guys are making for boxing fights, you know, and what I consider to be like this leg of the modern era of boxing, and it's not uncommon to hear 50, 60, 70 million dollars. Well, I don't know, maybe not
Canelo made
70.
$45 million for nothing.
The same level of fighter in the early 90s, you know, considering, you know, inflation and all that stuff
No,
like
they
that
said
was.
like Hearns, he like it took him a while, but it was because no one wanted to fucking fight him because he was so fucking good. Um, it took him about 30 fights, but then like at a point like in the 80s, he was making like 12 million,
Then
15
that's
million.
shit. That's
That's
huge for
wild.
the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's
So,
like the only show in town and it's like on channel 3.
mhm.
It's like you got 6 channels and he's like it's channel 4, dude. Like
Yeah,
that's it.
that makes sense,
So,
especially when you factor in like pay-per-view. There was no, oh, send me a link to the fight for a
yeah,
stream or
no.
anything like that. No, they were just
Yeah,
making it
fucking
all. Yeah.
Marlboro and fucking it's like Marlboro and fucking Coca-Cola or like Fujifilm. It's like those guys are fucking fight like they'll pay whatever the fuck because they know everybody's gonna be watching it.
I know, I remember that there was times when like there was like the Super Bowl every year is like new TV season for a lot of people.
Right.
And I know there were certain fights that were also the same thing where it's like, oh, this is an event. Like I've decided to put myself out there to be the host of the fight of this big fight, and I need to do it up, and I need to get a new TV because I'm gonna have like 15
Yeah.
people over to watch the fights. Like when I used to work for DirecTV, there was a couple instances where like they would be chatting with me while I'm doing the install, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I just got this one. I needed that new
Yeah.
for the fight. I couldn't have this fucking rinky dink TV when I had everyone over for the fight or whatever for whatever fight would have been happening at the time." So yeah, that's interesting how things have changed. Whereas now it's like, dude, a fucking everybody's got a fucking 55-inch
Or
flat
like
screen at least.
Prince Nassim Hamed. Have you ever heard of that guy? You remember that guy?
I've heard his name, but no, I don't. I don't
Oh
know anything
man, my
about him.
dad. I've never gotten into like a worse argument with my dad than like talking about like I think he's good, Dad. And he's like this guy, like what the fuck? Because he was just so weird. It was like and one mixtape boxing.
Mm.
It was just so awkward, and then he just got his ass beat. Dude, Mickey Ward and fucking Arturo Thunder Gotti, those 3 fights. Oh man, those are crazy, dude.
I have
Jesus Christ.
seen. I think they've maybe fought like 4 times now, but I my brother-in-law did put me on to. We watched those Juan Manuel Marquez and who's the other guy he fought. They had like a
Eric Morales,
Eric
El
Morales.
Terrible.
Yeah, yeah. I've
Yeah,
seen like
Eric
2 of
Morales
those
was a
fights.
mean motherfucker, dude. God
Those
damn.
those are really fucking A1 fights.
El Terrible is a ruthless nickname too.
Those stuck out of my head as like some of the best boxing matches that I've ever seen. And I've
That
always
guy
heard about.
looked like he just jumped off a helado truck too, like with human beings inside of it, and then just like jumped in the fucking ring, dude.
Yeah, and I'd always heard about the legendary fights between, or I don't know how many times they fought, but Mickey Ward and Gotti. Because I'd always heard
Yeah.
the story that like fucking that Gotti fucked him up so bad that like he literally shifted his brain in his head or something like that. Like that when the
Yeah.
medical reports came out, like he changed Mickey Ward. Mickey Ward wasn't the same
Oh
after
yeah.
those fights.
And then Marvin Hagler too had the Homer Simpson syndrome, where he there's like muscles on the top near your temples where it's like we have everybody has, but like at the very most you'd have like a quarter inch of it,
Mm.
and he had like a full 3/4
Shit.
inches. So he was like literally wearing a football helmet.
Dang. And I know what muscle you're talking about. Like you could see it when you're chewing, like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
movement. Crazy. Well,
And they showed him like chewing gum, jogging,
uh-huh.
like wearing like one of those old school like fucking under siege like admiral hats and shit, and you can still see that shit fucking popping through, dude.
The hat just fucking shifting back and forth
Yeah.
as he's chewing.
And that was like old school, like the gray sweatsuit with the fucking towel tucked in, fucking crazy ass sit ups from the fucking like what is this? His feet aren't even like latched to anything, and he's doing like those vertical sit ups where he's like standing up. Like man, that guy's got like it, and it always tripped me out. Like I wonder what those guys were eating. You know what I mean? Because now we know so much about like nutrition. There's just like so many different types of things. Like it would be interesting to see what those guys were eating, like their diet, what their diet was back in those days, because those guys like literally look like Marvin Hagler looked like Apollo Creed. Like remember when when Apollo Creed like in Rocky would come out, and you're just like, man, he looks like a fucking panther. That was Marvin Hagler.
Yeah, and you got the sense that like as a kid, I remember just looking like I don't know, like bodybuilding and getting ready for boxing. It must be the same thing because some of these dudes were just jacked. And when you, especially when you think about like the different trends that have come and gone in fucking sports medicine and conditioning and all that stuff too. Like remember the those face masks everybody was wearing in MMA that are supposed to like restrict your breathing to simulate.
Oh, the
like,
Boston ones, like the VO2 or whatever.
Yeah, that's supposed to like simulate training at elevation or something like that. And then like
Rampage used to wear one all the time, like the Bane masks or whatever.
Yeah. And then I remember like a few years later, like it came out that was like, nah, it doesn't actually do anything for you. If anything, it potentially like fucks up with your conditioning or but I would say keep me informed on when there's big boxing matches, because we are called the Fight Plug after all. We're not called the MMA Plug. So I would be interested in talking about more boxing matches moving forward, but you're gonna have to lead the dance a little bit on those and let me know like, hey, let's talk about this fight that's coming up. So make sure you watch it, and then I'll do my due diligence there. But let's before we wrap up, obviously we touched on it a little bit earlier at the top of the show, but we haven't really talked about Jose Aldo calling it a career, retiring from mixed martial arts.
Like just trying to pull out more and more random boxing shit so I didn't have to fucking talk about this.
We kind of had some inkling after his fight with Merab Dvalishvili about a month ago, where Merab kind of like spilled the beans and said that while they were talking a little bit in the cage after the fight, he said that Aldo said that was it and that he was going to retire. We were all a little bit annoyed at Merab that he would kind of get in front of it and spoil the news, because he, especially for a guy like Jose Aldo, you want him to retire on his terms and make the announcement himself. Then it seemed like that wasn't the case, and then potentially Aldo was going to stick around, if for nothing else, possibly to just kind of like put us off the scent that he just wasn't really sure yet. But this past weekend, I think it was yesterday, or it might have been Saturday, Aldo and his wife welcomed their second child into the world, and he's retired officially from mixed martial arts. Brandon, do you think Jose Aldo stays retired? We've talked about the MMA retirement, but I think you're muted. I think you might have muted yourself.
No, absolutely not. The fact that he has one fight left, he really can't go anywhere or do anything like he wants to go, which would be really cool to see him in like the PFL or something. Well, that's apparently they had an agreement. I don't know what it was, or they came to an agreement or what, but the UFC agreed to let him out of his last fight. So he's not under a UFC contract anymore. Oh, is that right? I thought it was like he could. Yeah, you could be retired, but you're retired.
It's like a GSP retirement, where it's like, we own you in forever if you ever want to come back and fight in any capacity, but not the case with Jose Aldo.
See, I thought if he was going to ever do anything in MMA, it had to be with UFC. Mm-hmm. Like the opposite Nate Diaz, where it's like, get the fuck out of here. We don't want to fight. I don't give a fuck what you do. You're just not doing it here, dude.
Yeah, I guess. And I don't know if that comes down to the UFC. The people who've worked with Aldo, for a better, over a decade now, know his temperament, or just believe like, okay, when this guy hangs him up, he's really done. We're not really worried about him retiring and then letting him out of his contract and then immediately running and boxing or something like that. But knowing that now, are you still convinced that he? And I don't mean, do you think he continues to fight with the UFC specifically, but he did only say he's retired from mixed martial arts. He's never, from what I know, he's never made any mention about wanting to get into boxing or cross over into that world or anything like that. But to specifically say that he's retiring from mixed martial arts, that leaves the window open enough, I guess, to speculate a little bit about potential. Would there be any interest for you in seeing him try to box somebody? I don't even know who he would box at his weight class.
Muay Thai. That'd be really cool. He's you could say he's the best practitioner in boxing. Muay Thai, a lot of people said he's an amazing grappler. Fucking soccer, like whatever, That's what I would want to see, just because I love his style. Like if I can just watch him do that for a full fight, I would just like love to see that. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's gonna come back. I think there'll be a matchup. Something might shake out in that division to battle. Who knows? Connor. What if him and Connor, like Connor, can somehow put together a win or two? We always bring that motherfucker up for whatever fucking reason. But like, if something happens and it could be like a catch weight and they go back to Brazil like Connor promised he would,
Yeah, and that's probably one of my biggest hangups about Aldo's career, and no fault of his own or anything. It's just the one instance where it's like, this is where it didn't fucking go right. This is where he was wronged the most, because I mean, he's come up short in fights. He's lost to some of the greats, and it's like, whatever, he lost those fights. But that McGregor rematch should have been immediate, and he didn't get that.
They said he was retired because he couldn't get that rematch, right? Like, he wanted it so fucking bad, and they wouldn't give it to him. And he's like, well, I'm gonna retire then. Fuck you.
And that does probably check out a bit, because at this point, it almost seems kind of surprising that Connor would even go back down to lightweight. I mean, that's where he belongs. I'm not interested in seeing Connor fight at welterweight, but and we know Connor's only going to chase high profile money fights at this point. He's owned 2 titles. He was a double champ and never defended either of them. I don't think it's ever really been about the titles for him. It's been about the money. So why is he gonna get down? Connor doesn't have a title to chase, even though he could be slotted into a title fight at any point if he just says he wants to.
Talking about Conor McGregor right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, I do. Yeah, no, good point. Good point. But I just like it is in play for whether or not Aldo will ever fight in MMA again. But you're that's true. Like, what a fucking a disgrace to shift focus to Conor McGregor. I just started feeling gross, dude.
I just got real gross. And it's my fault. I was like, I started it. It's my fault. I feel fucking stupid. But that's the only fight. I mean, not the only fight. There's so many fights I would love to see all the fighting. But Cory Sandhagen being one of them. We talked about it. But
Dominic Cruz.
Yeah, I don't.
The Dominic Cruz fight seemed perfect.
Oh,
no better time in either of their careers to lock horns, but they're both coming off of a loss. Was that on the same card also, or was it probably back-to-back cards? It was really close enough to where it's like, dude, just you can make it happen. I have a feeling.
Well, Chidi Vera was like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Really recent, yeah. It's always a fucking blur. As soon as we finish recording for whatever fight card we just watched, and as soon as we finish our recap, it
seems like it was just yesterday. And it's like, no, that was on Mother's Day, dude.
Yeah, it's all in the wind. Francis Ngannou and Cyril Gane fought like 4 months ago, forever to me. Like, it's always gonna be 4 months ago.
Yeah, he rapped Francis. Yeah. Well, I just want to say something, like, as far as like for MMA or whatever, and I mentioned it on the podcast, and I'm sorry to stop you there, but like, for the reason why I hold him in such a high esteem is just because, like, the first mega fighter I ever seen live was Jose Aldo. He fought in an arena that's very like near and dear to my heart. I'm a big Sacramento Kings fan. He fought in Arco Arena. It was the fucking knees against Cub Swanson. And it's just like, what in the fuck is this, dude? Like, this just did not seem. And
jumping double knee right off the fucking gates, yeah.
It was just, what the fuck? And like, he was just head down. They're calling his name, or they're introducing him. His head's down. And he's just bobbing, and then it's just knees, boom, boom, and it's like, what the fuck did I just see, dude? And man. Oh my god, dude! I was very, very into my Jägermeister part of my life at that point, so I was just like yelling and screaming at the top of my lungs.
One of my, well, there's been a few, because there was a lot of instances of him fighting in Sacramento too, and then coming out to, when he first started coming out to Run This Town Tonight. And it's like, oh god, it's so perfect, because he's always been fighting in enemy territory. There's been few instances where he's had the chance to. I mean, he fought Chad Mendes in Brazil, and that was a big thing. Like, that's burned into my brain of him like turning around, defending the takedown, and landing that knee, and then just like automatically just shutting Chad Mendes off and running into the crowd and celebrating with his Brazilian fans. Like, at that point, I was like, Aldo, he reached the top of the mountain. Dude, he's like with his like. That's when fights in Brazil, like UFC fights, were still relatively new. Like they had just started going back to Brazil. Like
those crowds are wild, dude. Those
nuts.
Brazilian crowds are fucking crazy.
And
he did like the Pele thing where like everybody shut the fuck up for a little bit just to watch Aldo. Like everybody just like knew, no matter how. And then even I felt it in Arco Arena, Sacramento, like, and it was in WEC, so it was like, okay, we're all there. Most of us are drunk, but everybody just like shut the fuck up and put an eye on this guy. And he wasn't even the main event, but everybody just shut the fuck up and watched it. And it was like 8 seconds, 6 seconds or some shit. And then everybody loved Cub Swanson too at the time. And it was just like, God damn, dude, who the fuck is this guy? And then for the rest of my life, I will always fucking, like, he's like top 3 for me. It's like John Jones, Jose Aldo, Fedor, like that type of shit.
Yeah, he's top 2 for me for sure. It's him and Joanna, like the top, and then afterwards, I don't even have him ranked.
Yeah,
it's just like, and these are other fighters that I like.
Yeah.
For me, I think one of the things that I'll always remember Aldo for is the fact that he would just break mixed martial arts meta. Where when I first got into the sport, it wasn't uncommon to, especially when people were like criticizing like Chuck Liddell and stuff like that. You would always hear this in the forums. It was like, oh well, they just keep feeding them wrestlers, and it's like nowadays to say that is completely flipped on its head, because it's like, oh, if you got this guy who's only a striker and you're gonna match him up with wrestlers, like you're feeding the striker to the wrestler. It is not the other way around.
Good point, man.
And when I was watching that, it was still very much like, oh, like this wrestler doesn't have any hands and you're making him fight Aldo. Like, of course he's going to piece him up. And then now, like, it's completely the other way around, where it's like, but he's still like kind of spat in the face of that. Like, aside from guys who still technically have perfect takedown defense in the UFC, either because they're a fucking freak like Kamaru Usman and they've barely, recently been taken down for the first time officially in the UFC. So obviously that guy's like takedown percentage is insane, or they're somebody who's only like maybe had 3 fights in the UFC and none of them have gone to the ground, so they technically have perfect takedown defense because they've only had 1 takedown attempted on them or something. Aldo said fuck that, and we've seen it. We had the best example of it recently where it was a sad fucking match. He came up short, shouldn't have happened, but Merab, to defend 16 takedowns from Merab, like going out, he reminded everybody, it's like, no, you're not escaping a stand-up fight with Jose Aldo.
Cartoon.
A cartoon, exactly. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of legendary moments in the sport. Represents that wave of that first wave of WEC fighters coming over into the UFC once they brought them into the fold, and was the face of one of the first new lighter weight divisions also, because for the longest time it was just 155 up to heavyweight, and they introduced that featherweight division.
And to be so good and not being a wrestler, and to be so good at takedown defense, to not be a classically trained wrestler at that weight level, is where, like, I mean, that's what Uriah Faber, that's Mike Brown, they're all wrestlers.
The division full of them, yeah. No, I mean, he was basically like the team alpha male killer for a little while. Like,
oh yeah, dude, yeah. And then he would go to their town and from across the country, and just he wouldn't look you in the eyes. He would just walk down there, and then he would kick the fucking shit out of you, and then walk out.
Our humble, stone-faced assassin, unproblematic king of Rio. We'll miss you. Brandon thinks he'll be back. I don't think he'll be back.
He's coming back, dude.
I think we might see him in some combat sports capacity. It's not really going to surprise me if he tries out boxing, and I think that he might find some success there, but I also would worry a little bit that he's not going to navigate boxing quite in the same way that like someone like Anderson Silva has, where Anderson Silva has very clearly been logical and specific about the type of fighters that he's fought. You know what I mean? He's had his mix of former MMA fighters, also like Tito Ortiz and shit like that, and boxers who are or I'll perceive to be washed. You know what I mean? Like Cesar Chavez Jr. So I kind of worry that if Aldo does try boxing, that he's just going to want to jump in there with the top guys that are fighting right now at his weight class. So
he would not look out of place, though. It wouldn't be like a guy wearing a fucking zebra costume and a fucking in a tiger fucking, where it's just like, that's uncanny, like that doesn't look right. He would look exactly like up and coming good boxer.
Probably. I would certainly hope so. But I'm with the lengthy conversation we had about boxing, I'm definitely more out of the loop too. So what weight class would he fit into in boxing? Because I know it's different. Like I don't know what 145 pounds is in boxing. Who's there for him to fight?
I don't know.
Like assuming he said, fuck that, I'm fighting the top guys in boxing at this weight division. Who is that?
I think like Lomachenko's were like 125, 130. Is it like no? Let's look it up. Is it like
Gervonta Tank?
Yeah.
It's funny. When I asked you about 145 pounds, in my head, Jose Aldo will always be a featherweight too.
Yeah,
it's funny, but
I think it goes by like 7 pounds there, right?
I don't know.
7 pounds.
And then there's like it breaks down in boxing. In boxing, I just got the sense that it was like every 6 pounds or something. There's another division or something.
And then there's like catch weight. There's a lot of catch weight shit too.
So. Either way, man, I think
he's gonna fight again, dude. He's gonna fight again in the UFC. He's going to.
It might just
3 years from now. Book it. 3 years from now. By 2025, he'll fight again.
And we might find out sooner. Well, after he's kind of got the new baby, like magic, is kind of faded off a little bit, because I think it's very obvious that must have been the deciding factor. He's in the hospital. His wife is delivering their newborn baby, and he has this moment where he decides, fuck the fight game. I don't need to do this shit anymore. I'm calling Dana. I'm retiring. We're good. And so, yeah, it is very possible that, he's gotten past that. The honeymoon stage is over, and he's like, I'm bored. I don't know about just running a burger restaurant for the rest of my life. I back, guys. I back. So, and you know what? I think that would be my hope. If he does come back, I actually do want him to come back to the UFC. I think that's where he belongs. I think that's where they will. I think the gesture that they made to him by letting him out of his last fight of his contract and just letting him go, I think they also would know, like, okay, we fumbled the bag a little bit, and by matching you up against Merab, if you come back down the line, we'll give you an appropriate Legends fight and let you end it that way. Not that he even needs it. I mean, he could be a contender if he doesn't wait too long to come back. If he comes back in 6 months, I'd be like, yeah, let's match him up against whoever he needs to fight at bantamweight to get him to the title. But
yeah, because it's so funny because like at the time I had came from watching Mike Brown and Uriah Faber, and then Showtime Pettis was on that card. Ben Smooth Henderson was on that card. Cub Swanson, Jose Aldo. Like, I just came from watching this. Like, it was amazing, dude. Just amazing MMA card in Arco. And then I come home to like spend some time with the fam, and then my dad's like, "Hey, I got some tickets. They're fighting at Sound Arena UFC. Like, you ever heard of Ken Shamrock?" And I'm just like, "Oh man!" So like, I literally had to watch Ken Shamrock, and then Tank Abbott fought some like 7-Eleven guy, like 7-Eleven attendant, and my dad's like, "Dang, that shit was pretty sick. I'm sure you don't get shit like that in SAC." And I'm just all like, you wouldn't believe. And then like I try to explain to him, and he's like, "You're stupid. You're dumb. What are you talking about?" And I'm just like, "Okay, dude." Yeah, Tank Abbott at Sound Arena fighting some like. And then Ken Shamrock did like the like ankle lock that he did in UFC, and then he did like the thing where he like snapped in the ring. Yeah, he did that shit he did in WWF, where he like just starts like German suplexing like a bunch of and it's like, oh, this is so fake. Because like I guess in Fresno, like it was literally like they played it off as it was a real like, but I guess it was like basically WWF, but they did it in the cage with like 4-ounce gloves,
made to look like NHB.
Yeah, and yeah, Tank Abbott's gonna knock this guy out. Kid Shamrock's gonna ankle lock this guy, and everybody's just gonna yell. And like it was like literally like 3 months off of me coming from and seeing like Jose Aldo double knee Cub Swanson, and like I went with my dad and his other like all-state buddies, and they're like, "This is pretty sick, right? Guess you don't get that much of this back home, huh?" And I'm just like, "Oh fuck!"
It's like I just watched the NBA Finals, and you're taking me to a Harlem Globetrotters
Yeah,
game. Like,
dude, not even Harlem. Harlem Globetrotters are doing something, dude. Like, it's like I don't even know what you would put like Ken Shamrock and Jose Aldo Cub Swanson in the
what's the
same
comparison to make? Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say this. This has been a little bit of a dream for me too, because for a long time this was my like, oh, why doesn't the UFC just do this? But now that Aldo has retired, if he were to return, there would be no better time to do it. And I don't think I've mentioned it on the show before. I'm not even sure if I've mentioned it to you, but they own all of the. I mean, they owned the WEC. They owned all of that. Their fight library, all the assets, everything. They could bring that. They could bring back the blue cage whenever they wanted to. They could replay those fights. If Aldo were to come back, book Aldo versus Cruz and
Golden One Arena
and call it the UFC presents WEC 54, and just for the fucking love of it, just do it.
We're going, dude. So Doko right now, dude. There's a bomb ass fucking. It's like right outside that area. It's called Doko, and you just sit right there. And it's downtown Commons in Sac. It used to be a mall. I used to go to that mall, dude, all the time. I worked at CVS. I would get blasted out of my head and just walk around that mall. And now it's like Golden One Center. And but now they have a thing called Doko, and so like it's right outside the fucking the arena. You just sit there, you scan your phone, and you can order all this crazy ass food. And then it's just like huge, and then you can go in and see the Kings Arena and stuff. Golden One's fucking sick, dude.
Beautiful.
If they, oh man, that's wild that you just said that, dude.
Just for fun, that the UFC presents WEC 54, like picking back up because 53 was the last card. Bring the blue cage back for a night. Don't book any fighters for that card that are above 170 pounds. Just keep it like how it was with WEC, all welterweight and down.
Bring back Scott Jorgensen. and fucking Fili down or whatever. Yeah, whatever that was.
Any old school WEC guys that maybe happen to still be in the UFC. I can't even really think of any specifics. Like Cub and
it'd be Cub Swanson's. I mean, not terrible.
No, yeah, I mean that's a fucking fight to watch. And Cub Swanson would be so down for that. He knows the kind of pop that he would get.
Yeah.
Bring back the WEC music. Fucking get Frank Mir and Brian Stand come back on commentary for one night. Let's go down memory lane.
I used to go to a place in Sac called Puerto Azul. They have the coldest Dos Equis with salt and lime. And I used to just fucking sit there, blown off mid, drinking cold Dos Equis. Fucking Barack Obama was still fucking senator, dude. And my life was amazing. And just watching fucking old, because like they used to do, it was on like Field TV or like Spike. So they should just show nonstop UFC and then WEC, and I used to just sit there, and they had bomb ass food, and then, man, we'll go to fucking Puerto Azul, get all fucked up. I'll take you all around Sac, dude. I'll show you a while this time.
I haven't drank in a little over 4 years now. If they did this,
it's about the same.
If they did what I'm saying, I would totally have a beer with you in Sac, waiting to watch.
I'll take you to Old Tavern. Dude, we used to get. You could get a pitcher of Pabst Blue Ribbon and 2 shots of Jaeger for $7.
What better way to grease the wheels for a long night of cage fighting?
Dude, in $21, dude. I used to I did the Conor McGregor walk into Arco Arena before that shit was a thing, dog. And then they have it's like Sacktown, so it's just like I would take the light rail to the bus, and then take the bus to Arco, then the bus back, and then walk. And you could be so blasted, but as long as you can do the fucking alphabet and count to 25, you could get home. So it's like I'm on 22nd and in. So like, where am I at? I'm on 12th. I gotta just walk until I get to O Street.
We're set, dude. we're set. Dude. I could say the alphabet backwards, so I'm not worried about it at all. That'd be great. We are at 2 hours and 16 minutes, so no better time to wrap it up.
Go to the gay bars and do a little queer baiting, and then try and get a few extra drinks when the money's low. Show a little chest hair. I'll show you around.
All right, with that, we'll put a bow on it. I do have to ask you too, because I just mentioned that I was going to ask you on air. We don't have a UFC card coming up this weekend, so we won't have anything to come. We don't have a fight to break down right now. We won't have a fight to recap next week. Do we take a week off, or do we watch the Contender Series? Do we watch Bellator? Do some kind of an MMA recap, or do we just
how about we just fucking, because I think we riffed a lot on, like, because I did not expect you to bring up Triple G Canelo. We just riffed on boxing for a long time. We riffed on Jose Aldo. We can just, whatever's in the news at the time, let's just do it. Bo Nickel is coming up to fight. Talk some shit about Mackenzie Dern and how much I fucking hate her. Whatever, dude.
Yeah, we can do like some early breakdowns for the cards that'll be coming up the week after. I think you're right, because by the next weekend there will be fights again, so we will at least have fights to
we can do a Violent Bob Ross biopic or like true crime series.
Oh, I would love to narrate
Special
something like that.
Guests.
If Ron Perlman can get a job doing voiceover in this space, then I certainly can too.
You should, dude. You got good pipes for that.
Let's do it. I just need them to send me the scripts. All right, Brandon, have a good night, man. Thank you for joining me once again. Everybody, like I always say, if you're still watching, that means you're a real one. We really appreciate you. If you ever have anything that you want us to talk about, if any suggestions or anything you want covered, then leave those in the comments. Otherwise, don't forget to hit the like. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that and ring that bell so that you are reminded anytime one of our new episodes comes up. You won't miss a thing. You'll be very happy. You'll be the smartest MMA fan in the room, relatively speaking anyways. With that, I say good night, Brandon. Have a good one. See you next week.